All right, so we've got a pretty good looking golf swing here. This is like probably one of the better camera angles I've ever seen on Reddit. So kudos to you on that for actually following most of the instructions on what people are supposed to do to line up the camera. So this will give us a good indication of like where you are, what your path is like, what it's doing on the way down. So I'm gonna nitpick at it a little bit just because you're probably a slightly better player. But if I were to have some assumptions, you are probably a little underplaying. You're probably hitting push cuts on your bad shots, or you probably overdraw the golf ball on your bad day. So, things I would be somewhat proactive about fixing are number one, from address to what I would kind of dub P2 here. So the club gets a little inside, and your right arm, your trail arm, is really long, which in most people that's going to be a good thing. So for you, it looks like because your trail arm refuses to bend and it's so long for so long, you have a hard time hinging the club with your wrist. So when the wrists start to bend and kind of, let's see if I can get this, the wrists start to bend backwards this way, like that, the right elbow is going to start to fold a little bit. Yours does not. And so what that's going to do, it's going to create a club path that's probably too far behind you, during the takeaway and into the backswing. So as we take it back further, you have great depth, but you do it with a pitch of the shaft that's like, somewhat flat at that position. It's not my preference. And it's going to lead to some of the things that you're doing on the way down. So if I were to erase that line and the previous one, let's go all the way up to the top. You have very good control of what your arms do. You have very good like external rotation here in that trail arm. That's really good stuff that you have. What you're doing on the way down is what's causing some of these problems. So as I click a few frames forward, all right, so you're going to see that club in mid transition, slightly mid downswing. I would call that like P5, where the left arm is parallel with the ground. You notice where that club is intersecting. It's intersecting just below your trail shoulder. And is that the steepest place to be? No. Is it the most shallow place? No, it's somewhere in between the two. But what you're going to do is you're going to start to like maneuver your right shoulder more downward, and you're going to start to shallow it out even more. And you're going to see this in the next couple frames. So you're going to be more closed to the target at that position, and your right shoulder is going to start moving more downward as your left shoulder starts going more upward. You're going to notice the club's going to get behind you pretty quickly. So there it is at that position there. The club head is behind you. It's already underplaying at that position, and the next frame is going to be even more underplaying. So if I were to stop here and take a peek at just your shoulders, that left shoulder is going to start going upwards too quickly, and that right shoulder is going to be continuing to move downward. So sometimes I'm going to guess you take some really heavy divots. You probably get ball first because you're probably pretty talented, but like you probably catch golf ball and then just pinch it, and then tons of divot in front of the golf ball. Some days it's okay. Some days it's probably not going to feel so hot, but that's what I'm going to say. And I'm going to guess if that's what your typical pattern is like, you hit some big pushes. If the face is a little bit open, you're too far from the inside, or you shut it down a little bit and it goes left. So those are your most likely your misses. In the next video, I'm going to show you what we need to do to kind of eradicate that a little bit. So, one of the things you're going to see is those shoulders are, not going to look like that just after impact. We're going to start to get them a little more open. The left shoulder is going to be a little bit lower, and the right shoulder is going to be a little higher. It's kind of counterintuitive to what I have to teach most slicers. I'd have to teach them what you do to stop slicing it, but we have to teach you kind of the opposite of that to get you moving in the right direction. Another telltale sign that you've got probably a path that's too into out is kind of how high the right arm exits. You can kind of see it exiting way out here through your neck. Check out the next video and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, so here's what I was referring to in that first video. So at address, you set up and your arms are really long, really straight, specifically the right trail arm. So here it is, very long and straight. As you take the club back, that right arm stays really, really long. You have good turn and good tilt at this point. But because that right arm's long, it's really hard to get the right wrist to bend backwards or even hinge the club even like remotely vertically. So what you're getting is a swing or a club head that's moving too far in and back. And then as you start to try to make that backswing, the club is too flat at that point. And we need to correct that a little bit. So here's the first thing you're going to work on is, I would say, at this position here, number one, you can probably just bend your right elbow a little bit, like let it sit a little more soft, if you will. It doesn't need to be locked out. My preference would be, can you kind of put the right elbow in and then turn the forearm a little bit so it's got a little bit of that look to it instead of hyperextended. So if you can get it to look a little bit more like this, as you take the club back, it's long, but there's still a little bit of bend and fold in it. That will allow your wrists to free themselves up so you can hinge the club a little more vertically and you can pitch the shaft a little bit more on that angle. The other thing that I would highly recommend is at, the top of your backswing, your feel. It's going to be incredibly foreign for a person that's a little underplaying. So your feel should be like, as you start that downswing, that your right shoulder moves out towards the golf ball and stays high for longer. And if you watch this video, you're going to see the club move outward. What you're doing is immediately tilting it downwards to shallow the shaft. You have plenty of in to out. You need to keep pushing on the slightly out to in. So if you keep doing this better and better, you're going to notice your exit. See if I can do this without hitting a Christmas tree. Your exit's going to look more around into the left, and your right arm's going to exit more around your body. Your shoulders at impact won't be so tilted backwards and kind of facing the golf ball. You're going to see something that looks a little bit more like this. Hopefully that makes more sense. I can't see the camera, but it's going to look more open. I'm not trying to get you open for the sake of being open. I'm just trying to get you more open so it keeps the club from getting to under. So if you notice, the more I tilt my right shoulder back, the more the club gets behind me. The more I rotate it out, the more it stays out in front of me. We need more of the out in front. So simple things you can do. You could even take, if you have somebody that's at the range, you can have somebody take, a golf club, put it here on this side and try to match your shoulders up and get them more level at impact and post impact. So they look more like this instead of like this. You're tilted backwards too far. This way, we're trying to level them out incrementally. Not a ton, but incrementally. It'll keep the club more outward so you can hit better golf shots. The low point will be corrected. Everything else will kind of fall into place. Hope that helps.